Welcome everybody to the Fall Line with KS and Company. I'm Dave Caper and I'm here with my buddy Angelo Ross. What's going on, Angelo?
Just chilling, skiing in the rain today.
You skied in the rain today? Oh man,
yeah,
where were you today?
Home mountain, Seven Springs.
Yeah. There was some postings from Seven Springs showing some bumps with some leaves on the bumps and a couple bare spots. But Mikey was saying they're still telling you, man, they're still going at it.
Yeah, there's a lot of skiing. There's a lot of snow. It's getting kind of rotten now. It's, slushy and whatnot, but still slide on it.
There's still some skiing up here. It's going to be warm this weekend, man. Warm. So spring skiing is coming. I'm looking forward to that. Yep. But, everybody's probably wondering what happened last week, and we had a little hiatus. It was a KS and Company vacation for a week, I think.
I think they probably thought it was nice.
They're like, we don't have to listen to those guys this week. Thank God. But we got a little something for all you folks out there listed in this week. And we're going to just chat a little bit. We thought it'd be like a little barroom chat. Just Angelo and I talking about some educational stuff, some our own thoughts and some of the conversations we've had a little bit during the year. And I was just going to start off by, throwing a couple Angelo's way. Questions, not all at once. I'll try to throw them one at a time, but you know how I am, Angela. I usually have 2 and 3 part, sometimes 4 part, just to see if you're still paying attention.
That's how my answers are most of the time. Like 4 answers and none of them answers the question you asked.
So, you've done the classroom thing. You've done the public school thing in the classroom, as everyone knows. And I've done the on the hill and out there in the real world, as my father, would do it. The classroom is when you're doing it. So if you're on the dozer or you're running the backhoe, whatever, it's like, okay, get on there. This lever does this, lever does that. So everything's been very physical. But, as all of us have gone through the classroom, the educational thing, through school, through our K through 12, many of us went farther on. Some more than others, like you. And then when you're teaching there in that environment, what are some of the things that you did in your classroom environment to make it a little more hands-on with the science thing? Were there some things you did other than just the lecture type thing to try to give kids a different way of focusing on things?
Yeah. I mean, I taught 20 years and I taught general biology for the first 10. And I was a new teacher. And, that's more of a traditional lab setting. So I think my first years there, my first decade, I was more what you would expect a science teacher to be, setting up labs. I did do some field trips and some outside experiences during those years, but the curriculum was pretty much set, and most of the hands-on stuff was in the bio lab with beakers and whatnot. But I was pretty fortunate to teach in a district that was in a fairly rural spot, so we could walk out the back door of the building right by my room and across the parking lot and 100 yards through a soccer field into a patch of woods where the cross-country trail was, and I set that. There's maybe I don't know how long it was, quarter mile loop through this little wooded section that I set up like an outdoor lab. So when I shifted to the ecology curriculum about 10 years in for the second decade of my career, most of the hands-on work was outside. It was out there. We had a block schedule. So we did 4 classes a day and they were 90 minutes each. And you changed at the semester. So somewhere in January, you would get a new group of kids. But what that meant schedule-wise, there was like my fall groups, we could start with the outdoor lab experience. And then toward the end of the class, winter would come. And then with my spring group, I'd get new kids in January. We'd start with the classroom stuff and then finish the year out with the outdoor stuff. So it was cool because one group of kids got to see what happens in the fall, succession, just the whole seasonal change and that kind of deal. And then the other half of the year, the kids got to see what happened in the spring as the year woke up. But yeah, I mean, it was more like let nature do the teaching, and that worked out for me. Just if you back off of the lecture and just set up the environment, the classroom environment where kids can see processes through time. They start to figure out, how they're working.
Yeah. Now, when did you start teaching skiing in that? I mean, you were teaching skiing for all of that or most of that, right?
I taught. Yeah, I was older when I got my classroom teaching job.
Yeah.
I was, how old was I? Late 20s. Yeah. But I had been teaching skiing since 1990. So actually teaching skiing is what got me to, be interested in being a classroom teacher, because I was like, I was one of those, a lot of people take 7 years to finish school, right? Yeah, they're called doctors. I did the extended undergraduate program, and I was like a ne'er-do-well ski bum. But I finished my undergrad, and a bachelor's degree in biology doesn't really do much for you. You kind of have to go on from there, unless you want to be like a low-level field scientist or whatever for the state, which I didn't want to do. And I had been teaching skiing for some years up to that point. And I was like, well, I can teach people things, so I'll just be a school teacher. That's how that happened.
Oh. So when you're looking at teaching skiing and teaching in the classroom, how has each helped the other? Like, have you brought a lot from skiing into your classroom, thought process wise, of how kids learn? Mm-hmm. And also, the other direction, in which has it been even, and I can hear Jake must be, he's whining a little bit there, isn't he?
Jake just ate dinner. He's like snoring down beside me.
Couldn't hear him.
Yeah. Some folks at home, just ignore that. He's all right. Wow. That's a really interesting question. I never thought about the amount that each affected the other. I have often said that my classroom teaching benefited more from my ski instruction than vice versa. Right now, I'm not so sure that's true. I'd be tempted to say it was about 50-50, but I was always really impressed that the things that I would hear through PSIA, whatever manual was out at the time, whatever version of the curriculum we were looking at, PSIA has always been pretty progressive in terms of looking at the whole student. Multiple intelligences, and Gardner and Maslow and the whole gig. And really, I thought PSIA always had an edge over public school because everything we do on the Hill is physical. There's just such an opportunity for it to be real and experiential and expeditionary. And public school was always trying to catch up to what PSIA was doing. They weren't chasing PSIA in particular, but just the things that we are able to do as ski instructors. I think public ed could really benefit from that. The flip side, now looking at how my ski teaching benefits from what I learned in public school, I think I'm really willing to give up the reins. Let just the way I'd take kids out in the spring, for example, and they'd pick a patch of land, whatever, this many meters by this many meters, and they'd catalog species through time just to see what would bloom. And here come this shrub layer before this understory layer, and then here comes this understory layer, and you start to see the low canopy start to leaf out and whatnot. And if you can create that setting where they have the opportunity to observe, then nature becomes the teacher. They don't need to read about it in a book. They just saw it. They just smelled the smells and saw the sights, And so I'm not afraid to do that in ski teaching either. Just give it up and say, try this activity, or go ski that weird double fall line pitch, or go, do half of your turns on that groomer and then do the other half in that manky stuff beside it. Just see what happens. What do you have to do to, be good in each of those conditions? And then the conditions, the task, the ski hill becomes the teacher. So I don't know. I'm pretty willing to let like nature do my work for me.
And I wanted to ask you these questions because a lot of folks in our membership in all the disciplines, whether it's alpine or tele or snowboard or adaptive program, they're studying to not just improve their physical performance, but to try to improve their teaching, their knowledge base, the technical performance of what they need to also transmit, and then how to transmit that, how to connect with people and set up goals, all that. I mean, there's a ton of parts. I mean, it's a ton of parts when we break it down. I mean, the learning connection model is kind of neat that it puts it, I think, in a, I hate to use the word simplistic, but it puts enough chunks together to cover everything, but not 4,000 pieces, because you can look at those components and there's still parts we can talk about within them. We get into each word sometimes, especially in the skiing, our alpine components, and not just that discipline, but I know we do there a lot. But it's, I'm wondering if people are really studying and understanding the different modes they need to go into, because I completely go into a different mode of how I want to understand certain information when I'm trying to learn it to be able to transmit it to get somebody else to do it versus just me doing it on the hill. I mean, if I'm just doing it on the hill, I'm just going to go out there and give me a task and let me go play and see if I can get the outcome. And I'll play with a bunch of different movements. I'll take feedback in terms of, maybe do this a little bit more, make your ski come around the corner slower. I mean, whatever it is. But when it comes to, if I want to go out and work with a group or work with you on your skiing, I have to be a lot more part oriented in my brain to understand not just the outcome, but the layers going to get there, and what all the different body parts have to do, and the different ways that I can describe it, kind of different ways I can get you to talk about it, to explain what you are, and I have to take that patience. So there's a lot of parts here. I just wondered if there's some ways, some thoughts, maybe we can encourage people to think about those things. I would like them to think them different, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you agree with they should be thinking about when they want to transmit something versus when they want to physically do it?
Well, to respond to your first part of that, there was
a lot there. Sorry.
That sounded like one of mine. Where the hell's the end of this thing? I think it should be simplistic. There's a large part of me that thinks the belief that you can actually teach something to somebody is avarice. It's almost an arrogance to think that it's even possible to teach somebody else something, right. Because the brain does what it does. The brain is just turned on. It's just an information sponge. And so it's going to learn regardless of what's happening around it. It's learning nonstop. That's what it does. The role of a really great teacher, I think, is to get out of the way as much as possible. But you mentioned the people skills too. It's like, yeah, we have a diagram. It's terrific. I think the learning connection model is beautifully laid out. It's very simple. You can dig deeper, and we have to. We have to have that rubric approach to it because it's going to be a scoreable item in the exam process. But on the surface, really, honestly, like the granddaddy idea with the people skills is being respectful of people, period. Yourself and others, period. That's it. That's all there is to it. But right when you start to dig down through the layers, yeah, it gets a little more complicated because people are complicated. And in terms of like the second part of your question, I think what you were getting at, let me just reiterate.
Because there was a lot there. Sorry.
I'm trying to pick the spaghetti off the wall.
My brain was just throwing it out there, man.
Damn. It's like your brain vomited on my microphone. What you were asking, I think, was when do you give information, like I'm assuming verbally or through a demo, and when do you, back off and let them learn on their own? Is that what you're getting at?
Well, yeah. And getting at it and your thoughts on it. Cause I mean, for me, I tend to give not a lot right now when people are trying something, just let it go happen. And then they're like, well, they get it. And I'm like, they'll regurgitate to you exactly what they just did. And I haven't been able to get my skis on that high an edge early in the turn to be able, I haven't felt that shaping. I didn't feel like I had to really bang the end of the turn to slow down. You know, they're saying all the things I'd love in a simplistic way of I'm able to shape the turn more now because I'm rolling the skis onto edge versus just twisting them sideways and slamming them. And then, but they go, well, but what about where my right knee is? And what about, did I have my ankles flexed enough? I mean, because they go right to the part stuff, which I need to know that as the coach in terms of I want to be able to analyze their skiing and know what's going on. And yeah, they're ski instructors also, but I think they have a hard time. Like I try to make sure when I personally am in the mode of physically training or I'm learning something to be able to understand it more in a technical standpoint to know how I can set up a task or how I can set up a learning environment. I think people get confused. I believe people get confused in that in their own learning and they mix it all together. And then they never get into a kinesthetic mode when they're trying to improve their own skiing, riding performance.
Yeah. I think the way to do that is to just don't talk, you know, like try this, watch me and try this, or what, ski down, all of you ski down to that slow sign. Watch me come at you. Tell me what you saw. So you do that. And they tell you what they saw. You say, okay, try that. Do what I did. Right. And then they do what you did and say, so what do you think? And if it's one thing ski instructors like to do, it's talk. So yeah, I don't think you're going to have a shortage of information, but I'm joking a little bit, but I think what it requires is you have to have a focal point. And that's like, let's just say it's an activity. Let's just, for the sake of naming one, let's just say it's lane changes. And you do these lane changes. And then allow conversation to happen. Just set up the situation where that's the focus. The activity is the focus. There are no answers forthcoming. Tell me what happened on your end as you're doing these things, you know. And then I think people will give insights into what they need, you know. But that's the beauty of backing off, is it like if you have a group of 6 or whatever, somebody's going to talk about turn shape. Somebody else is going to talk about edge angles. Somebody else is going to talk about they felt it in their lateral oblique, you know, and all of a sudden you have 3 or 4 very different roads you can go down. And then knowing you have vast knowledge and experience. You're going to be able to comment on each one of those things. And all of those people, everybody there benefits hearing all these different ideas. But the beauty of it is that none of it really came from you. You know, it's just like these folks commented on what their experience was, and maybe you are able to provide some clarification or another activity that takes it one step farther for them. Like, wow, that turn shape felt really great. And you're like, oh, cool. Try this thing now. See what you think about this activity. And they come and they're like, wow, that was great. Or no, didn't do it. What else you got? You know, but it opens up like these vast avenues if you back off. It's almost like the less you talk, the more you get to cover, because you get better questions and more variety of questions throughout the day, you know?
I find that as I pause here, because it's looking for the right words, it's people want to learn everything, I think, all at once, which I don't blame them. So would I. I did. And I don't know. It's interesting because like when I was out skiing this week on the weekend on Sunday, this week I've been transplanting and putting tags in and playing in the dirt. And then they tell me yesterday when I sent out a picture to the buddies, they're like, your fingers aren't dirty enough to earn that beer. I'll show you it's dirty enough. But when I'm really just playing with my skin, like, say you're just doing a task, like, people go, oh, you're doing a task. Like, well, I come off the top of the hill and it's pretty flat for about a couple hundred yards till we start heading downhill. I just play with some railroad tracks. Mm-hmm. And I'm just playing with the speed that I tip my feet. Not changing the speed down the hill because it's pretty gentle and you don't pick up a lot of speed. So you can stay somewhat at the same speed, but then play with tipping the feet, how fast the ski will react. Mm-hmm. And I'm not thinking about every single body movement or every single thing. I'm just trying to sense when the side cut hits in. Mm-hmm. And I think some folks are trying to like put every part in the right place, and then they try to coach every part because when we talked about it, the legs have to change length, things are working inside the boot. You're rolling the foot over and it works up the chain, up into the leg and up into the femur, into the hip socket. And you don't want the belly button to go too far because you're going slow. All these stuff piles on.
Yeah.
And those are great for movement analysis and me watching somebody because, like you said, 5 people will do that activity and they'll all do it different. So I need to know those things per se if I want to give feedback or someone's struggling. And that's kind of my thing. I would hope people are able to start compartmentalizing a little bit in terms of their learning so that they can start to go, I need to dig deep here to understand, is this for my MA to be able to get information out? Is it, so it isn't just an information dump of, okay, we're going to do railroad tracks here. You need to have your belly button here. You need to have your foot here. You need to do this with your feet. You got to change leg length. You got to roll them in. Don't turn them. I mean, it becomes 20 things.
Yeah.
When they might do 19 of those.
Well, you're talking about, I think I'm hearing 2 things. Like the first part, you're talking about you are doing these railroad track turns where you're just focused on this one thing. That's good science, right? I mean, you're doing an experiment and you have one variable. So that's the way science works. If you're trying to have 75 variables, your experiment blows up, So yeah, right. Have one variable. Think of one thing. Right. But the other piece of it where people want everything now, there's an impatience, there's a lot of forces at work there. First of all, I sort of blame us. Like I think culturally, clinics and ski clinics are data dumps. And so if you're new and you're just coming into the fold and you start going to these clinics with these senior members of your staff and every single one of them is a data dump, you just think that's how it should be. So that's what your expectation becomes. Then you go to a clinic with somebody who gives you one thing and then you're like, oh, should I be disappointed in this? I don't know. But another piece of that is more societal. It's like our society, we want everything at once. Like, the 22-year-old newly graduated undergrad with a squeaky new bachelor's degree and $75,000 worth of debt goes out and buys a Ferrari and a $250,000 home, because they can't wait. They can't do the starter home and the Ford Focus for a couple of years until the bills are paid. You gotta have the Rolls Royce now, and that's us, man. That's America. That's a lot. That's the facade of America, is that you get everything at once. And that's just not how stuff works for most people. Like there are some fortunate ones who are born with they're born with everything. They didn't earn it, but here, kid, here's everything. Here, infant, here's a mansion and a yacht. But most people have to earn, and it's the same thing with learning. It just takes time. There's a measurable rate of the measurable rate of mastery. There's a measurable rate of how fast nerve cells grow and how fast the connections form between them as you learn new skills. Like there's a time element that's real. It's just not popular.
Yeah. I mean, and I do like to experiment and
I like to bitch about America.
I know. And I don't blame you.
Look, wait. Okay. For the people at home, I'm sorry. I'm not anti-American. Look at my shirt.
There you go. That? And you designed that shirt too.
I did, for Central Division. That's an American flag. For the record, I am a fan of America. I do, but That doesn't mean I won't make fun of us.
But yeah. And it's not just the skiing. I mean, we talked on the phone, I think the other day, and I was talking about what I did with a group last week. On the second day, I had an event, and I was going to go out and I was going to take some runs and see how many runs I could take without giving any information of technical stuff or what to do.
Oh, that's like your wheelhouse, dude. That's your,
it was
totally
great. It was like, I didn't have to teach anything.
Let's see if I can go all day. Shit.
Let's see if I can go all day. I'm going, okay, I can probably go 3 runs, and then I probably should have to say something. Let me see if I can go 2. Yeah. I'm going to try to go 3. I was thinking I'm going to try to go 3. We're on a high speed quad. It was small hills. And I said, I'm going to go out and see if we can. I wanted to see if I could get 3 runs. I was hoping I didn't get to 3 runs, but I'm like, I think I'm going to get to 3 runs, and then they're going to start wondering, like, what are we doing? But I was really curious if anything would come out from day one. Mm-hmm. It was kind of that test of like, were there questions? Were there thoughts? And I was like, I kind of knew where I wanted to go from day one, but then I'm like, I wonder if I go out and do that, will I miss something? Mm-hmm. Because we'd had a really good day one. So I went out and I didn't even get, I think I got like a third of the way through run 2. Mm-hmm. And then it wasn't necessarily questions. It was just thoughts or something we'd done the day before. Hey, could you play a little more with this? Or, I had yesterday talked about this and I was wondering this. It was really more inquisitive versus like, I didn't get that. It was more, they wanted more from certain things. So it was like, it worked out, but I was wondering, I'm like, okay, I was kind of gauging it. I can go for a run. There's the warm up. I can go for a second run. And they go like, okay, 2 runs. We didn't do anything. Then you go for the third. I'm like, okay, by the time if I get a third one, so I'm kind of rating how far I could go before I like, okay, I gotta alter this experiment. And it worked out awesome. It was really cool because the whole day then came off of that and worked from that with the group for the whole day. And it got, I really do believe it got to the point at the end of day 2 where I wanted to get to, but it definitely didn't go along the route that I had thought I might have to go to get there. Mm-hmm. And it definitely felt really cool to go along the route that they wanted. Because once it started, once I let the time happen for that to start, it did roll. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this, I know it won't work every time, mm-hmm. but it did really flow well. And it was really interesting how much more came from them on day 2 than from me versus where day 1 mm-hmm. seemed to be more, not everything for me, but it was definitely more of a get the thing started every run. Mm-hmm. And so it was fun. It was definitely a teaching experiment that I thought was pretty cool.
Well, there's an expectation when people pay for a product that they're going to get something for it. So I totally understand why you feel like you need to start at the beginning. But again, like that product doesn't necessarily need to be information going from you to somebody else. Like it can be more holistic than that, going in both directions. And I do this thing every day when I warm up. My first run of the day, I go up the chairlift, I get to the top, and I take a run, and I just make observations on the way down. But I'm nothing in particular. I look around with my eyeballs. I listen to what the snow sounds like or what other noises might be going on. Like, oh, why is there music today? Oh, there's a DJ. Why? Oh, it's Saturday. That kind of thing. Are there smells? Is the Waffle Hut open? Like, can I smell Waffle Hut from here? So on and so forth. But that's just what I do because the first run of the day, I want to look around. I want to know what's going on. I see how many people are on the chair. I look at the snow surface. If I'm at another resort, I look at the color of the pads on the snowmakers and what color are their light towers. Just taking it all in, right? And so I've incorporated that idea into all of my clinics. So the first run of the day, that's what I do. We get to the top, and I say, hey, on the way down, make observations, and by the time we get to the bottom, I want you to be able to articulate 2 of them. And then I stop talking, and everybody's still looking at me. And then somebody inevitably says, well, what do you want us to observe? And then I inevitably say, that's all you get. Make observations.
Yeah.
But then you get to the bottom and say, well, what did you notice? You know, I haven't used any sensory words at all because I want to hear what people say. Well, I saw this. I heard this. I smelled this. I saw this. I heard this. The snow felt like this, but it sounded like this. I was surprised, you know, and then you start to get brains waking up. You know what I mean? And if it's a 2-day event, on the second day, when I do it, get to the top, say, hey, on the way down, I want you to make observations, be able to articulate 2 of them at the bottom. When you get to the bottom on the second day, having already done that with the group, they just start, man. And it's cool because you get insights into what they're paying attention to. But the very important piece is that everybody's paying attention because there's a lot of mindless activity that we go through. And it's an effort, you know, not only to get information from your crew on what sort, like where they are right then and there. Are they watchers? Are they doers? Are they listeners? So on and so forth. But they start to pay attention right from the beginning, you know, and once the information starts to flow from them, it's like you're being seeded with ideas on how to take your day, you know, and like someone like you with depth and breadth, you don't really need to go with a full-on plan because in that situation, you're willing to let people sort of steer the ship. And then you just adjust the rudder every once in a while, you know?
It's that for me, that's more fun, man.
Well, yeah.
It's almost like, cause you're not doing anything, but you are. I mean, it's interesting. Cause like you can, like you said, you know, adjusting the rudder, it's like when you let it go that much, you have to be careful that it continues to go. And
you saw Star Wars movies. Yoda didn't do shit. When Luke was training to be a Jedi, Yoda sat on a rock, right? And just like teased him every once in a while, and the dude turned into a Jedi.
Yeah.
Like, but that's a great, you know, it's a great way to think about teaching is to back off and let people develop, and then just if and when they need help, just give them what they need to start going stronger, faster, you know?
You know, Michael talked about that, I think, in all 3 segments we had Michael with us. You know, Mr. Rogan definitely, I mean, he was constantly going back to that, questioning himself, you know, do I need to back off? Did I jump in? Did I, you know, they needed to learn this and I messed up to learn. It was really neat how he kept saying that. He was always evaluating that, which is great, but you know, probably 99 times out of 100 or 999 out of 1,000, he probably did perfect, but he's always evaluating that.
I had a group the last 2 days, and one of the guys yesterday, it was the type of event where the group needed to teach on the second day. They needed to perform for a score. And I was coaching them yesterday into that segment for today. And I said, here's the format. I want you to do this. Like, these are the only things you're allowed to say. Watch me and do what I do. That was hard. It's hard to get into that mode, but they did. And one of the guys looked at me and he said, do you mean you don't want me to verbalize? No. He said, you don't want any verbalization. And I said, no, I do want verbalization, but not from you as the coach. I want you to set up an activity, and then I want you to elicit verbalization from your students. You know, hey, watch me and do this. And then when they come down to you, say, so what did you think? What did you experience? What happened? And then as a coach, where do you need to take that? I don't need you to sit and give me a dissertation on the task. I know the task. You just showed it to me. But the verbalization should come from your students, you know, as they're working through the concept. And then again, you adjust the rudder.
Yeah, and I got on this track because of you know, some of the things you and I have been talking about, and I wanted to talk about this tonight. And I'll try to summarize it here for those folks out there going, what the heck are these guys been talking about? Which I think they'll know. But, people are talking about different things they do with students and don't do with students and yelling at each other, whether it's online or, the Facebook musings back and forth of being called study groups. And all I see is people saying, that's wrong. That's wrong. There's never like conversation of how to do better or, different ways of doing things. It's like, I get on there and I'm like, God, when I read some of that stuff, I go, man, there must only be one way to do everything. There must be only one way to teach every single student, because all I see here is like, no, that's wrong. You got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. You got to do it this way. And I don't know. I think if people want to learn, and I personally believe one of the best ways to learn to be a good teacher is to watch other teachers and to talk with other teachers, like talk, not like, explain some of the things you're trying to do and, what they're trying to do, watch what they're doing. I mean, we watch each other all the time, man. If I'm out on the hill and there's other groups and other staff out there, I'm watching the tasks they're doing. We talk at lunch and going, hey, what were you doing over there on such and such a trail? And because you can see this, as you're riding the lift or whatever, you can see the staff member doing a demo and then watch the rest of the group coming down and see the results. So you get to see all of it if you're riding the lift or whatever. And, or you're just curious what they're using that terrain for. Or sometimes I'll ask, hey, you were doing that. What did you do before that? What did you do after that? I saw you working with that group over there. What did you do with them in the afternoon? Curious where you took it to. It's much more of a curiosity. Or that to me is like a study group to study with each other and to learn from each other, not like do it my way. Because the only way to do it is my way.
Well, social media is like a mask, on very, very, very many different levels. Like, first of all, you have there's a screen between you and those people, and they have a screen, and there's time element because somebody posted 3 hours ago, and then you sneak in at 2 a.m. and make some snarky thing and don't come on and check again for 36 hours. But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. Whatever.
Yeah. It's just not a lot of learning happening.
No, there is a lot of hostility on there. But there are a handful. I accidentally looked at one of those posts one time, and there were some good ideas on there. But there was a lot of snarkiness too. But here's the problem with that, I think, is that everybody's got all these answers. Everybody has answers. Here are the answers. You know what I mean? But man, I think really good teachers are really good at asking questions. And the primary mission of any teacher should be, like, the driving force is know your students. And if all you do is talk at people or type at people, then you don't know your audience. And so how can you possibly provide the right information or hit the nail on the head if you haven't listened and gotten to know the people that you're talking to? You know what I mean? And that in itself should be, the lesson taken from that should be listen more and talk less and type less, right? When you meet somebody, whether in a class, you meet a group of kids in a classroom, there's 30 of them in there, man. And I'm guilty of this. I'm not trying to say I'm good at this, but like, I can say the words, it's harder to do. You walk into a classroom on the first day of school and you have 30 fresh faces sitting there. You're 7 classes a day, 30 kids in each. You have 210 people that you need to get to know. Individuals have personalities, groups have personalities, like groupthink is a reality. But most teachers just launch into the curriculum day one. Here it is. It doesn't matter who you are. I'm jamming this in your throat. I understand that that's how it has to be in a lot of cases. There are a lot of classes where you have to cover this curriculum because there's a state assessment at the end. But I really think everybody benefits more if the teacher takes a couple days to figure out who's in front of them in that room, right? Then the same thing obviously carries into any kind of sporting lesson. Like if you meet what you see, what happens. It's an assembly line mentality. These poor people, these poor never-evers march out of this rental shop. One boot's buckled, their skis are in an X, and they're holding them like this, and the pole's dragging the ground, and one of them's under their armpit, and they're miserable and sweaty. And you don't know where they're coming from, and you don't know what they've done in the past and what they're capable of or why they're even there in the first place. And you say, I know you're here to ski, but put those things over there because we're going to march around in your boots for a while. Like, you know what I mean? Like we don't get to know them. It's like, I got to fill this hour so I can go away. It's just, you got to know your students. And that is definitely something that those social media, groups do not allow for. It's just, It's just pontification. It's just, here's my 2 cents. You know what I mean? And it's, I'm sure it serves a purpose, but I'll never know because I'm not going to read it.
Yeah, but I know you read some of it.
I accidentally read some of it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's where I wanted us to. I mean, that's a great place to summarize this podcast on is learn your students, know your students. And I think a really key one there is you said, listen. And I have a great one there. If you think of the word wait, WAIT, wait. And whenever you're getting ready to say something, just think of wait. And it stands for why am I talking?
Yep.
Is it purposeful?
Yep.
And I think we'll finish tonight's podcast on that. Thanks for listening, everybody. This is The Fall On with KS and Company here with Dave Capron and my buddy Angelo Ross.